Hi everyone, and welcome to Tips for a Successful and Amazing Conference, Camp, or Meetup, or Other Gathering. This is who we are. My name is Jordana Fung. I'm from Suriname, South America. I speak Dutch and English, as you can tell from me speaking English right now. So if you can go ahead and say hi everybody, and if you speak different languages, please say you do. David?
Hi everyone, my name is David. I'm from Switzerland. I speak English, German and Spanish. So if you want to talk about something, feel free to come to me.
Mike Anello from the United States. I'm a slacker. I only speak one language, usually well.
Doug Cohen from the United States as well. I also speak redneck, so.
I am Cristina. I'm from Barcelona. I speak English, Spanish, and my language is Catalan. And I help organizing several DrupalCons.
I'm Brian Gilbert from Australia, and I speak Australian.
So the one thing we all have in common is that the most important thing we feel to have a successful camp is to create and maintain safe spaces. So I'm going to leave the resources slide up here so you can always make pictures, and we're going to go through them a little bit. And the whole flow of this is going to be more of a conversation on things we consider important and things we've learned along the way. So whenever you have questions, when we're going through some of these, please feel free to ask those. So the first step to creating a safe space, we feel, is to have a code of conduct, because then you're making your rules known. You're explicitly stating the things that are allowed and not allowed. But more important than that, we feel, is code of conduct enforcement, because a code of conduct is nothing if you don't enforce it. So we've seen it happen a lot, unfortunately, that people have a code of conduct, and that when people come up to them, their concerns are oftentimes dismissed. And this is one of the biggest mistakes you can make as a camp organizer, is to minimize someone's concerns. Because to you, something might not be big, it might not be important, but to that person, it is. And to many others, it might be. So this is something that we learn more about in a code of conduct training that we are organizing. And Mike can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I want to mention the links up there are case sensitive. So like the COC-AMS is capital C, little o, so make sure that when you type them in, they are case sensitive. So I will say I'm kind of wearing, and Jordana as well, the two of us are kind of wearing two hats right now, both as camp organizers, and we're also exactly half of the Drupal Community Working Group, who is, our mission is to help ensure a safe community and a healthy community. So one of the things that we have done, and recently, in the past year or so, is we've been hearing for a while that camp organizers, including myself, I am one of the organizers of the Florida camp, we wanted to have some resources to make it easy for camp organizers to provide all of the code of conduct enforcement tools possible. So with that in mind, we've actually announced and released three major-ish things over the past year related to that. And those three things are, number one, there's now a code of conduct template for Drupal events that you can go, if you click on this link.
The first link up there.
Yes, thank you. If you click on that link, you'll be brought to a page with that template. It has you can do a bunch of search and replace, but we actually encourage camps to read through it and adjust it based on their camp and the local culture. Item number two is what we call the Code of Conduct Playbook, which goes to what Jordana was talking about a second ago, is, okay, well, what happens if there is some type of incident? How do you handle it? So the playbook actually has some scenarios, it has some best practices, and we actually worked with a lot of camp organizers to develop that, and we're actually looking to find some folks to help us maintain that and to make it, and to add additional content for non-English speaking parts of the world, and even to translate it into other languages as well. And then the third aspect of it, which I'm pretty excited about, we started a few months ago. We've partnered with a company called OtterTech. And again, we realize it's very US and English centric. We are trying to find non-English speaking trainings that offer similar content. We have been unsuccessful so far. But it's a half-day training for code of conduct contacts. So a lot of people have been to events, and in the opening session, you'll see a slide that lists the code of conduct contacts. If there's an incident, talk to this person. Well, these people need to have some type of training other than having read the code of conduct or maybe having read our playbook. So we partnered with a company that provides specifically this type of training. And what we're doing is as people graduate or complete that training, we are posting their names at a link off this link up here in hopes that these people will become sought after to attend more events. As an event organizer, I want all of our code of conduct trainings, code of conduct contacts to complete this training. Because we feel that if you can demonstrate that you're taking it seriously and that it's not just something you copy and pasted from somewhere else and threw it up on your camp website, if you can demonstrate that you're putting time and thought and effort and care into it, that by definition will create a safer and more inclusive environment.
And to be fair, we're CWG, we are in the CWG, so we deal with these kind of things often. And I did the training already, and you still get stuff out of it. There's still stuff we learned from it. So it's a valuable resource for anybody, even if you don't think you need it. And if you don't think you need it, you might need it even more, to be honest. So
I'll stop talking there, but if anybody's any questions about that, feel free to find me. I do have to boogie right after this session, but I'll be around all day tomorrow.
And our Twitter handles are on here as well. So piggybacking on that, the whole thing about a code of conduct and problems with your camp, you're not going to know about them if people don't feel safe to come up to you and talk about them. This is the whole thing about why minimizing it is such a bad thing, and when about the training on realizing how to handle it when somebody comes to you. Because when somebody comes to you with a concern, they're calling in, right? They're coming to you to address that concern privately. Don't give them a reason to publicly call you out on it. Take care of it, handle it, take it seriously. So, another great thing about this is having a code of conduct and being a good enforcer of it is it creates a safe space for diversity and inclusion. And a great way of getting more speakers and a more diverse speaker is the Camp Organizer Speaker Diversity Workshop. You might have heard that in the keynote initiatives today by Tara King. This is also an amazing training, and they're doing a train the trainers workshop so that you can teach others to give that training. And another way of encouraging things is about, well, first off, you guys stop me if there's anything you kind of want to chime in with, by the way. So what we tend to do is learn a lot from each other. And a way to learn a lot is the recording initiative. So Kevin Thal is doing all of the recordings here, and he's back there. So you can see him there in the purple shirt. He's always looking for people to learn and learn the recording initiative and volunteer. So how do you guys handle looking for volunteers and
Can I go backwards for just a second? So one thing I have learned recently as someone who is in a position of privilege, the white guy in America gets a lot of freebies. I have learned that putting a code of conduct in place gives other people the security to come to your event when they may have had bad experiences at other events in the past. So you may never actually have to deal with a code of conduct issue. But if you're like, well, we'll have one whenever we actually run into an issue, you're missing out on some people that don't feel safe because there isn't that measure of, oh, this is how, if something bad happens, something gets dealt with, because they've already experienced it and they've already had that problem. I've never had to experience that, so I'm on the other side going, why do we need a code of conduct? Until something actually happens, let's not worry about it. But there are a lot of people who've had that experience in the past who are missing your event because they're like, well, maybe something bad will happen to me and I won't know how to deal with it. So
Yeah, it's a way of ensuring safety.
Can I add one thing? I actually want to ask Kevin a question back there. Should the red light be on the button?
Absolutely, yes.
You should hit the button then.
No, it's good. It's good.
It's good.
Oh, the button. Okay. All right. The light, the button is not lit up.
side.
No, this.
Never mind. Ignore me. I was sitting here panicking for the past 30
And this
seconds.
is why Kevin wants more volunteers to do the training, to be able to do this in Europe a lot more as well.
Can we remove that bit from the training, from the...
No.
That's all the video is going to be.
The recording initiative is, besides giving a lot of people access to your content that would never normally get it, it's a good way of promoting your camp or conference or meetup. And speaking of promoting, David, you have an interesting way of promoting your camp. Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
I'm sure. Basically, I'm the co-organizer of a Drupal Mountain Camp in Davos, which takes place every second year. And the last time, this year, we actually sent out a survey asking our attendees what did they like, what could we do better. And I think that's something that you should do for every camp, for every meetup. Engage your community, get their feedback, and don't send them like a form with 20 questions, but a simple one where you get like 1, 2, 3 important questions so you can improve, because it's all about iteration, improving, and you can have a thought, but the community also has their own thoughts, their own ideas, and that can help you to improve your camp or meetup or whatever event it is. And a lot of people actually responded that they really liked Davos, the snow, the mountains, and they would like to stay longer. So we thought about how can we combine this together, like doing Drupal, meeting other people, but also doing more stuff, enjoying Davos. And for the coming Drupal Mountain Camp in 2021, we are actually now offering different packages. So you can still buy your normal camp ticket, but if you want to stay, let's say, for 1 week in Davos, you can order a specific ticket. We have like 4 different packages published on the website, drupalmountaincamp.ch, sorry. But for example, there's a partnership weekend, so you can come with your significant order, and while you are doing the Drupal stuff, your partner can go to the ski or do some hiking, enjoy the Davos or whatever. We are also offering a package for families, because we don't want to miss out because of the children. So why don't you take the children with you? Where we are offering them an apartment, so they can come, 4 people, maybe 2 children, the parents, and just enjoy Davos and the camp more. And of course, we do have like some workaholics package, so you will get access to a co-working space in Davos prior to the event, so you can code during the day and have fun in the evening already before the camp. And that's something that came out actually after getting the feedback from the community. Like they said, we would like to have this. We thought about possibilities, and this is the result now.
That's amazing. It's a nice, interesting, out-of-the-box way of approaching it. And all from engaging your community. So this is really nice. Okay. And speaking about engaging your community, sustainability is a big thing for camp organizers. Being able to continue and doing it every year, and preventing burnout. So, Cristina, do you have some...
Yeah, so usually one of the problems when you are organizing a conference is that you are not organizing just one conference, you're doing a lot of things in other places, and some problems that can come after that is that you're just burnout, and you really need to know where you can get to. You really need to learn to say no. You really need to know where your limits are, and then train other people, explain other people how to do all these things, teach them, and then after that, someone else can come up after you and take over the organization, because otherwise, if you are burned out, you're just going to leave with all your knowledge, no one is coming after you. So that's one of the main things that just always trying to keep an eye on having a successor or something like that, or someone else that has your own knowledge.
So I can talk a little bit about that has happened in Australia. So I've been running the Drupal meetups in Melbourne since 2009, and for the entire time since then, basically. And we've run multiple camps, and we've had roundtables with a bunch of people who wanted to get involved, and we were always get involved, and then after that event, no one did, and eventually the meetup participation started to decline a bit. So I cut back to having quarterly meetups instead of monthly meetups. And then eventually I just stopped running meetups. It was the only way I could get someone to step up was to create a void. And it's happened just recently. So, you know, sometimes despite all your efforts to try and do succession planning, you can't find someone who's going to step up and do that. You might just have to step away. But as an alternative to that, the Sydney community actually flew me up to Sydney to help mediate an issue that they had where the leadership was not seen as being, and the structure they did was they actually have people only run 2 meetups, and then so they have like a bunch of people who are involved, and you do 2 meetups and then someone else does the next 2. So trying to not be the only person who does it at all is a good way to do it.
Yeah, I think spreading out your leadership is a really good way to prevent burnout. The WordPress Foundation actually enforces this. So if you want to run a WordCamp, you can only be the lead volunteer or lead organizer for 2 years running, and then you have to hand that off to someone else. So it forces you from the outset to be planning, hey, which of the people that are volunteering right now are going to help keep this running if you're really thinking that's something that you want to keep going.
Yeah.
And I think having an end date makes it less scary for the next person taking over. Midcamp does this, that the lead organizer can do it twice, and then they have to hand it off to somebody else.
So as someone who has been organizing Florida Drupal Camp for 12 years, I don't mind. I'm not burned out yet, but I can see where it could easily be a problem. The thing I have done, and there is one member of the Florida community here, so she's not even paying attention. Don't tell anyone I'm saying this. She's sticking out her tongue, that's nice.
Did you put a note in there for Kevin on the recording?
Yes, Kevin, it's another part of the recording we don't want. But so what I have been doing is I have slowly been, because the danger I think is where the lead organizer, there's almost 2 things that can happen, where the lead organizer has a bit of a control issue, where they feel like they have to be involved in everything, or if they don't do it, it's not going to get done right. So you definitely have to embrace the idea of giving people authority with responsibility. If someone's going to be in charge of T-shirts, don't micromanage what they're doing. Let them do their thing and stay out of their way. So so there's 3 main organizers of our camp, and what I try and do, especially with the other 2 organizers and for myself as well, is if I see the other 2 organizers are taking too much on themselves, I will try and cut that off very early. So no, you're doing too much. Like if we can't find someone else to do this thing, then this thing is not going to happen. So I'm very much all about just spreading out the load, so that if one of the 3 main organizers does choose to walk away, it's not going to be catastrophic. Sure, there might be some roles that need to be filled, but it's not something where everything's on one person's shoulders, which I attend quite a few camps, and I see a few camps that still run that way, and I always try and talk to the organizer and say, you gotta let go. You gotta let go a little bit and share the load, otherwise, the camp could suddenly, just not appear one year.
And so the Florida group has been doing a lot of interesting things with their meetups. So we are digitally based, right? We know about remote things, but we don't use it as much as we should probably. So the Drupal, Florida is a big state, and it's pretty spread out. So what they've been doing is they've been doing online meetups. So every
month. Yeah, so basically a different, in Florida we have really tried to remain as one Drupal group, the entire state, which you can drive from Pensacola to Key West, it'll take you, I think, 15 hours, something crazy. So there's a big range there. But we definitely have different geographic regions that make up their own smaller meetups. So we saw the problem of where meetup attendance was starting to decline. So not all geographic regions were still having meetups or all that regularly. So what we decided was someone in our community stepped up and said, I will organize monthly online meetups, and we rotate it between geographic regions. So like the geographic region where I am, we'll have an in-person meetup that will be broadcast via Google Hangout to other, basically to anyone, but primarily for folks in Florida. And so it gets rotated by geographic region. So even if that, let's say the Miami group isn't meeting every month, we can, through this program, at least get them to meet about twice a year to host a meetup. So we kind of keep the momentum going that way.
So it does create the practice rounds, and it creates opportunities for people like me in Suriname, where I don't have a meetup group, where I can just go to the Florida one online.
I imagine that would also alleviate the greatest issue I had was organising presentations.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're spreading over a much larger geographic area, it'd be a lot easier.
So, all right, talk about sustainability. Doug, you spoke about WordCamp a little bit. So you have gone to a lot of WordCamps and have done meetups for WordPress, right?
Yeah.
Have you noticed any big differences or things you can learn from each other?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest differences that's really obvious if you surf between both communities like I do is that DrupalCons are quite the production. They're very well put together. They're very extensive. They occupy most of a week. And there are a lot of trainings and a lot of sessions. And there's some pretty in-depth trainings at the beginning where you can go learn Gatsby for almost an entire day or things like that. And in the WordPress community, even the big cons tend to be camp-like in they're more sitting on a weekend. And they're not the same level of production. On the flip side of that, Drupal camps are very hit or miss. Like the quality is very, very different because they're much more organic and much more local community. The resources that are available are very different. So I think WordPress has tried to build things from the ground up, from the camp side up, and they may mature into a bigger conference. And I think the other things have gone the other direction in Drupal land. But WordPress Foundation actually partners with global sponsors, and this is something I would totally steal from them. They go and they find a bunch of hosting companies, and they get the sponsorship from GoDaddy for all of the WordCamps that are going to be done through the entire year. And so GoDaddy writes them a check for $100,000. And now instead of 100 WordCamps going and asking GoDaddy for $1,000, GoDaddy has had to write one check to one nonprofit, by the way. That makes the accounting much easier for them. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to go form a nonprofit with your local camp. So they've got some overhead and some structure through the foundation that makes it easier. So when I go as a WordCamp organizer and I sign up, I know I'm going to get my $40 ticket price for people that sign up for the WordCamp. And I also know I'm going to get $80 from all those key sponsors. I still have to go find a couple of sponsors, but it's also really easy to go find sponsors when you say, hey, I already have 5 sponsors, I only need 2 more. Yeah. It's much easier to gain those last couple of sponsors to pick that up. So that's something that they do really well that I haven't seen as much in the Drupal community that would be really interesting. So.
Well, this has been like an ongoing conversation for years between camp organizers and the DA and at different times and different levels. I know it's been discussed the pros and cons of additional centralization of Drupal events. Like how much do we want the Drupal Association involved with organizing the Florida camp or Melbourne or Davos? So I think it's tricky at best, but there's a lot of smart people in the Drupal community. So if you have strong feelings or an opinion or great ideas, I think the last link up there is probably a good place to start. If you're not, if you're involved in Drupal event organizing at any level, or even if you're just interested in it, this Slack channel, it's actually not part of the Drupal Slack, it's its own Slack instance. It's for Drupal event organizers. There's a lot of really interesting things happening there and a lot of opportunity to get involved. And help us kind of evolve Drupal events from where they are now to where we want to see them go in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years.
I want to talk a little bit to that one. I ran 2 camps in Melbourne, and we used the DA as the sort of fiscal backer for that, and it proved problematic for us just because of currency differences and time zones to get approvals and things like that. You might find that you have a Linux association in your country. In Australia at least, they do a lot of that support for other groups that are working with open source technology, so it might be an avenue worth checking out.
So on that topic also, so here in Europe it's a little bit different from the States because most of the countries, or at least a lot of countries, have local associations which are completely independent from the DA. And on the States, the DA can actually support a lot of things within the States. But of course, we handle things different. I mean, not that we're different, but there are different local associations, and that's usually
You need more lawyers.
I think I don't know if there's anybody from the DA here, but I think the DA is trying to get out of the business of being the fiscal instrument for camps. And someone can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's the idea I've gotten. I know that there is a bunch of folks from camps, I believe it's in the Midwest, so Chicago, and actually Kevin could probably answer this now they walk back in. Isn't there a fiscal entity that was mid-camp created that other camps are taking advantage of now?
Yeah, Midwest Open Source Alliance.
And how many Drupal events are handful, right?
Yeah, a couple right now.
Right.
Maybe doing Ohio soon.
Right, okay, yeah, so it's one of those things where there is no like one solution for a fiscal entity for an event. I guess the advice I can give for anyone who is interested in starting a new event, or if you're an existing camp organizer, don't run it through your personal account or your business account even. We use, and we've been very lucky in Florida. We have a local computer user group organization that we actually we donate money to every year to help them run their club in exchange for them being our fiscal entity. That's kind of, I know that there's a bunch of camps, organizers around the world who have created their own fiscal entities to do the same thing. I think Open Collective might be another potential.
Yeah, it was a couple days to use this Open Collective, and they were really great to us last year.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of options out there. There is no, and this is very unlike the WordPress space, right? Because in the WordPress space, it's done through, is it automatic or WordPress?
It's done through the WordPress Foundation.
Okay.
However, they are a lot stricter about how you can use brand marks and what you can call a WordCamp and what you can't and things like that. So you would lose some flexibility. But they have very high, because they're a nonprofit, they have reporting requirements. So they take in $100,000 from a sponsor, they have to have all these certain metrics and things like that are required by law that are not the same when you're doing it at different scales and different countries and things like that too. So.
And this is something that we as a community, we have to figure out. We have to decide, are we satisfied with camp organizers having to do all of this fiscal entity stuff and manage all this stuff ourselves, or do we want to look to the DA to provide some of these services, but that would be in exchange for giving up some control.
So WordPress is on the States, I guess it's based
They do
on
that globally. Yeah.
globally, so the law that they're based on is
I'm not sure how they do it when they transfer money between other countries. There may be different restrictions, but they support camps globally. So whatever they can do to provide the physical entity or the funding, basically we turned in a spreadsheet for our camp. It was like, all right, we spent $700 for the after party, and here's who paid that on their credit card, and here's how to reimburse them. And they have a back-end system in the WordCamp site. Which is another interesting feature that they offer is if you're going to host an actual WordCamp, an official WordCamp, you get the full infrastructure that gives you a site, and all you're responsible for is the design. They have the plugins that handle payment and print out tickets and all of those kinds of things already built together, which when you're running hundreds of camps a year, it helps to have someone get paid just to make a plugin that does badges, right? Because I'm sure if you've run a camp before, you're like, okay, how do I print badges? So they do some things like that that just allow you to focus on the camp part and finding speakers and doing fun things as a community instead of worrying about some of those logistics. So there are definitely things that could be abstracted out of there that don't necessarily have to be. Wasn't there a camp distribution that was discussed at one point? I don't remember.
We
where
actually
that
created one for when we did our camps, and we made it like an unconference. So at the start of the event, everyone who had something to talk about stood up and did a lightning talk, and then everyone in the crowd voted for what they wanted, and the distribution automatically scheduled it based on the room sizes.
Oh, nice.
No.
Yeah, so it's a Drupal 7. It's on GitHub. It'll be if you look for Reality Loop, it'll be there somewhere.
So one of the biggest things is I learned is asking for help, and the Drupal Organizer Slack channel is a great place to ask for advice and ask for help. And one of the things is also volunteers, just reaching out and actually talking to people to ask them to volunteer does a lot more than just saying, hey, come volunteer and come find me, because a lot of people don't necessarily feel like they can, but when you get to talking to them and explaining, like, no, it's just doing like this kind of stuff and this kind of stuff, explaining it to them kind of makes it a little bit easier for them to say yes to you. So on that note, is there anything else you guys have learned or want to discuss, or if there are any questions?
I'll say
No, you go first.
I'll be quick. The one piece of advice I give a lot of camp organizers is, if you're just starting out, keep it simple. Don't try to keep up with a neighboring camp. To have a good event, you really need, in my opinion, 3 things. You need good people, you need a venue, and you need presenters.
And a safe space.
And a safe space. 4 things. And then 4 things. But don't fall in the trap of, well, such and such a camp provides meals, so we have to provide meals. Or, this camp provides t-shirts or this, and so we have to do that. If you're just starting out, keep it simple. And this is what I tell my clients as well, add complexity as needed, and as you have the staff or the volunteers to support it. And the money, right? Yeah, so if you feel that to have a successful camp, you need to do a dozen things, but you don't have people to help you do all those things, and you start taking that on yourself, that's the fastest way to have a one-time camp.
Yeah. Or a nervous breakdown.
Yeah. The other thing is, there's some events that are run for free, and I actually think that's not always a good idea. For at least a starting event, you should have a fee, however small what it is. I think for our camps we charged $5, but it was just something that they paid so that they had incentive to actually turn up.
Yep.
Yeah, skin in the game. And the other thing was, I'm going to blank again. No, I forgot. Sorry.
So probably this time we are not. So we always did that, but maybe this time for DrupalCon Spain, it's going to be a free event. So there's a lot of complexity involved of that, because you really don't know how many people is going to come, and a lot of people are just going to sing it, but
They might not show up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and how do you actually plan the meal for that? So one of the solutions is, of course, if you don't have a sponsor for the meal, you don't have meal. But then you have to be in somewhere where actually people can get out and get something. So yeah, definitely there are some complexities tied to the price of the...
I remember what I was going to say. So, we mentioned burnout here, but you don't always end up burnt out as the cause that you can't do this stuff. Like, I've had to step back because of family. I still am, I want to be involved in the community, but I just don't have the time.
So on the topic of price, I actually, I encourage organizers to raise their price all the time. And the reason why is that along with that, I also encourage organizers to basically give away tickets to people who want them.
Yeah.
Right? All presenters obviously should not be paying a ticket. Students should not be paying for tickets. And just have something on the website. If you are in need of financial support to attend this event, contact us. And for our camp, it's basically, yes, that's the response from us and the request. So you kind of get the best of both worlds at that point. When you do charge something, so you can get reasonable numbers for things like catering and t-shirt production, but you're not stopping anybody from attending.
Yeah.
Because you're willing to give away your tickets.
And making that very clear on the website is a great way of attracting more diverse people and new people.
Yep.
So the thing is what is the proportion of the revenue or the benefits of the camp that actually come from the tickets themselves. So it's usually more on a sponsor thing, or the expenses that you don't have, like you're not paying for the venue or something like that, more than the ticket itself. So sometimes it's not that.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's not always straightforward, absolutely. But
A friend of mine ran a more industry association type event for several years, and they would charge $400 a ticket. But 80 or 90% of the people who got in for free, because the companies that sponsored it got a block of free tickets. If you were a university student, you got a free ticket. What he was doing was framing the value of the event as this is a $400 event. And so people showed up and they went, even though they were getting a free ticket, because man, I'm getting a free ticket to this $400 event. And so it shaped it in their mind as a very valuable event. Even though when you really drilled into it, they were not planning to make money off. They didn't make money off the ticket sales in order to support the event. They used the sponsors, but they created the value and the perception of value of the event by creating a price point that was very high, while still giving away 80% of the tickets.
God, that seems risky.
It seems risky. I would say be careful with that.
Like $400,000 a piece sponsorships that
Oh, okay.
he was selling.
Oh, maybe not that
So
risky.
you were actually the product if you were going for free. But
But you should also work out your budget so that the cost of ticket sales will cover the cost of the conference in case you don't get sponsors, things like that. The first time I ran the camp, I basically called all of the local companies, and it was a bit disheartening, but all the small companies sponsored, none of the big ones did. So, it's just, yeah.
So that's the thing. On Drupal events, most of the time we target sponsors that are companies, agencies from the community, not actually companies or sponsors where we could be their targets, as you were saying.
Yeah.
So that's usually something that we forget on local camps now.
And one other thing which I did want to mention, to talk to diversity and inclusiveness, at our local meetups, I made a decision right at the start to not have alcohol as part of the meetup. Before I took over, it was a pub meetup essentially. And I knew we had people who were Muslim and things like that who don't drink. So it was a way to be respectful to the presenters, because if people are all drinking before the talks start, then it gets a lot rowdier. And to make a safer space for those people. And we just encourage at the end, if you want to come, we can go to the pub now, have some drinks and chat.
So we're wrapping up a little bit, but I think we have time for one question if there is a question. Otherwise, thank you all very much. Thank you all for coming as well. And another important thing, thank you, Leslie, is the Drupal Association membership. It's a small, however much you can pay to be a member. It is the association that kind of puts all of these things together and connects us all. And it's a small token. But it goes a long way.
$15.
It's from $15. It goes a long way.
I'm sorry, I just thought about this. Can I ask a real quick question for a show of hands? Like, how many people here are current camp organizers or event organizers? So, what's that? Maybe a quarter? Put your hands up again.
About a quarter.
About a quarter of the room. So, for the remainder of you, is it safe to assume that you are aspiring event organizers, or? And I'm not being facetious about it. I'm just trying to figure out who is listening, who is aspiring? Okay, if you're not in one of those two groups, then I'm going to ask you to say something. No,
Okay.
one of those two. Okay. All right. If you were in some other group, find one of us. I'm just really curious as to, because this will help shape this conversation at future Drupal events if we know, if we have a better idea of who's in the room. So.
There are a lot of initiatives happening in the Slack channel. A lot of interesting things are happening, but I know not all camp organizers, especially from Europe, are in there. So it would always be helpful to kind of share those ideas and share what we've learned and the mistakes we've made so that we don't have to keep remaking them. So.
Can I throw out there for the aspiring folks in the audience, we tried 4 times to start a Drupal meetup in our area. And 3 or 4 people would come, and I knew there were more people that did Drupal in our area. There were entire companies there. That's all they did, and no one would show up. And we had much more success with a PHP meetup. So there's a couple Drupal people that come. There's a couple Laravel people. There's a couple WordPress people, and ours is a more higher technical level. We tend to do very geeky talks and not as soft. The WordPress meetup itself tends to do very intro level, very easy level talks. So we have attracted that technical level. So sometimes you may be thinking, oh, I'll start a Drupal meetup and nobody comes. Maybe broaden your base just a little bit. Sometimes we don't even talk about PHP, we talk about CSS, you never know. And, you may have more success spreading it out if you're having trouble developing enough of a community around something as focused. See if something a little broader.
On that, we had a lot of benefit of actually going and presenting at Joomla and WordPress meetups, having like panels, plus the benefits of yours versus ours and all that sort of stuff.
Nice.
That's a good idea. That's actually something that we will try out for the next year, 2020, to collaborate more with other open source meetups. So we work mostly with Drupal 8, I would say, which is easily can be deployed coupled. So you can partner up with the local Vue community, local React community, and just attract other people who otherwise would never have talked with each other. And that's one experiment that we will run to increase our meetup attendee number.
Last year in Vienna, we had a shared Christmas party with all the other CMS together. It's quite fun to do. Not much work.
Yeah, all of the tech meetups in our area, we get together and we get the recruiters to pay for the party. So they all want to hire us, and we're happy to take their money and have a good time.
That's a really good idea.
All right.
Every year, big party.
Well, thank you all. And please, if you have any questions, please come find us. We hope to see a lot more meetups and camps soon. Join us for contribution opportunities and take the surveys. This is how we get better. Thank you. Do I press the button again?
Yes.